Hi folks, Chris of the Polish Geek, and welcome to the review of the newest Angel Studios movie, Young Washington. It finally came out here on 31st of July, whereas in the United States it came out on a more logical date, July 4th, but then again, it's not like in Poland July 4th is celebrated anyway, so I guess date doesn't matter anyway here, but whatever. Young Washington finally came out here in Poland, and I'm back from the cinemas, and I have to say, wow, this was a really great movie, and it has really exceeded my expectations. And I think that, I'm pretty sure all of you, my American friends and subscribers, had lots of fun on the 250th anniversary, but if you've seen this movie exactly July 4th, then I think this was a really wonderful gift, because I think, once again, Young Washington is a really great movie, and it really exceeded my expectations, because it was on my top 10 most anticipated movies of 2025 list, but of 2026, what am I saying, my most anticipated of 2026, but yep, I had a really good time with Young Washington. It was really engaging, really interesting, the dialogues were really well written, really great costumes, and so historically authentic, and I think the actor that played Young Washington did a really splendid job, and the action was also really good, as well as the visuals and landscapes of American wilderness were amazing. But overall, a really great movie, and I had a really good time with it, and I think that if you've seen it on July 4th, then it was a really wonderful gift. First, I will say this. As the title suggests, as do the trailers, it's about Young Washington. So yes, it's not about American revolutionary, it's about his young years when he was a very young man, aspiring to be a general and then becoming one, and in the British Army actually, and what made him such a great general and why he was later elected the President of the United States. The movie doesn't really focus on that, because once again, it focuses on his young years in the British Army as a general, but it very much shows what a wonderful young man he was and why he later became such a good leader, because he was basically it from the start. From the young age he had lots of honor, he very cared about his men, and he did what it take for the good of his people, which is what every aspiring leader should be. By the way, if you ever ask me who was the best president of the United States, because if you've been watching my channel, you probably know I lived in the United States for 8 years, and when I first came to the United States in 2012 and went to a boarding school, I remember in American history class I was learning about George Washington. I always knew that he was the first president of the United States, who doesn't know that, but I was actually learning about his, how it came to that, and how he was in the past a general of the British Army before later actually fighting for the freedom of the United States. But if you ever ask me who was the best president of the United States, and if I ever did a top 10 best presidents of the United States, spoiler alert, correct, George Washington would be number one, and there is no question about it. This channel isn't really about politics, so I'm not sure I'll make such a video anytime soon, and to be fair, now on the 250th anniversary it would be most appropriate to do this video, but I already did something else at this point. But yes, if you ever ask me who I think was the best president of the United States in the history of this great country, the answer is unequivocally George Washington, no questions asked. And I think he'll be very disappointed in the political climate, and I'm just talking, he'll be very disappointed if he saw the political tribalism that really plagues America right now. But whatever, if there is a great movie that can, or at least should, unite all Americans, as well as people who just like good stories and good period pieces like me, then I think Young Washington is very much it. I also really love the message of this movie, and also this movie contains now what is possibly now my favorite quote of this year in movies, actually, of "Even a pawn can take down the king." Yep, easily my favorite quote in movies of this year, very easily. But I also love how the movie very much promotes hard work, honor, dignity, and it goes so in depth with those statements, and very much makes you feel so inspired and hopeful that if you try hard enough, you can succeed, and there is never too late of aspiring and following your dreams. What a really wonderful and really beneficial message, because this is actually a common thing that these days, especially in Western Europe, people often ask the question, why? But the much better question is, why not? And this movie really wonderfully reflects it. And what I also like is that because this is Angel Studios, that the themes of faith and religion were not removed from this movie, quite the opposite. George Washington's mother is a very religious woman and keeps telling what God intended young Washington to be, and I'm really glad about it. But then again, it's Angel Studios, so they are Christian studios, so obviously they were rightfully going to keep the faith elements in this movie. But another thing I really liked is how the movie started with a relationship between young George Washington as a little boy and his half-brother Lawrence Washington. I mean, I always knew that George Washington had an older half-brother, Lawrence Washington, but I never knew it was such a big age gap. Then again, maybe the actors were aged up, who knows, but yep, the age gap was very stunning between Washington and his half-brother Lawrence. Like, Lawrence in fact seemed more like a father than a half-brother actually. And again, as I already said before, the action was really splendid and really interesting. Like, if I compare this movie to The Patriot, do I think it was better than The Patriot? Well, I haven't seen The Patriot in many years. I remember really loving The Patriot when I saw it, and I still do think it's a really good movie. Likely the only great movie ever done by Roland Emmerich, but whatever, do I think Young Washington is better or The Patriot? Well, I haven't seen The Patriot in many, many years. My recency bias might tell me that Young Washington is better, but who knows? Maybe if I rewatch The Patriot again, I'll change my mind. But I do think that Young Washington is a very worthy spiritual successor at the very least. And I had a really good time with this movie. Lots of people are now saying that they want a sequel to Young Washington. But before we get to it, I have to mention one more thing that I kind of forgot. But I also think that the music was also really wonderful in this movie and so perfectly fitting with the theme of America and American Revolution. Yep, the music was also really great. As I already said before, as were the landscapes and visuals of American wilderness. So let's get back to what I tried to say. Do I think this movie should have a sequel? Because some people are already saying that it should have a sequel in George Washington fighting for the American Revolution, but the more I think about it, my answer is probably not. Because period pieces generally are not really suited to ever have sequels. They work best as standalone movies. Like, look at Ridley Scott's Robin Hood, a very underrated movie I think, but it was technically a Robin Hood origin story, but it did have a sequel of Robin Hood as Robin Hood, did it? No. And same way, Braveheart didn't really have a sequel, and Gladiator did, and we all know how that turned out. But in general, I don't think period pieces are really suited to have sequels. They are not meant to be like mega multiverse style franchises. So I think that as great as Young Washington was, I think it was a really good standalone story about Young Washington origins and his life as a young general, something that vast majority of people probably aren't interested, but this movie shows that they very much should be. Because, again, it was really interesting to see young Washington as a general in the British Army, and while once again it wasn't really about the American Revolution, but the seeds and how the United States of America came to be were very much there. You could totally see some foreshadowing that the new independent nation in the form of United States of America was about to be created, with the way George Washington interacted with the generals and his men and his mentality and all. But whatever, Young Washington was a really great period piece, and I had a really good time with it, and I'll very much happily go and see it again. So, thank you folks for checking out this review. Press the like button, please subscribe to this channel, and I will talk to you soon in another video, and God bless America.